Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all you wonderful, wonderful F1 fans out there, not only in the home of F101 Calgary, Alberta, Canada, but around the world from wherever you are listening to. If you're hearing my voice, it can only mean two things. That one, my name is Kelsey, and two, you are listening to the newest edition of F101. And as always with this episode, this is the Hot Topics Part 2. This is everything you need to know in the world of F1. Well, all the car liveries are officially out. We know what every car should look like, as least skin-wise, for the beginning of the 2026 season. So let's go through them. What were your favorites? Have you seen all of them? The newest ones to come out, the new Mercedes car. All right, Mercedes always has a banger, yet very, very simple color scheme, palette, and design. Except for this one. This is definitely not my favorite from Mercedes. It looks like they have an unofficial sponsor of Adidas. And hell, they might even have Adidas as a sponsor, but just the way the paint scheme adds up, those thick lines, it's not my favorite design I have ever seen from Mercedes. Now, granted, it is still better than the almost carbon one silver arrow one they had a couple of years ago, but it's still not exactly my favorite. I think they could have come up with something a little bit more dynamic, but if you have a simple car design, you better have a fast car. Red Bull, we got them, white cockpit. Ferrari, white cockpit. Cadillac, Super Bowl, they announced their car, they showed it what it looked like, and then immediate after for their second testing in Bahrain, totally different. So what do I mean by this? They showed a really nice chromed out Cadillac F1 car. I love this design. I love the chrome it was on the halo, it was on the spoiler, it was on the back wing. It was a really, really nice car. I think that was just the kind of maybe a potentially second skin for Cadillac. When we got to the second testing in Bahrain, all the chrome was gone. Now, are they protecting the chrome because it's so expensive? They don't want to chip the paint. Like, what's going on with this? I really hope we do see the chrome from the Cadillac F1 car. I don't know. I really hope I do. It would just shine and shimmer, and it would just be amazing beyond all doubt. Going back to Ferrari, they got the HP massive logo on there. They've got the dip of paint on top. It's another retro look. Is your Ferrari? When you think of Ferrari, what color pops to mind? It sure as fuck is not white. It's not HP blue. It is red. That's all you got to do. Take a red can of paint, step back, throw it all over the car, walk away, you're done. Do different versions of red. I don't care. Glossy, matte, 4 different shades from back to front, front to back, side to side split. I don't care. You don't need to have more colors on Ferrari than just red and black. All right. It looks old. It looks like you're trying to be something that you no longer are. Stick with red. That is what Ferrari is known for. Williams color scheme. I like the blue. Several different versions of blue. Barclays is a major sponsor, so they're a type of blue as well. I think it's too many versions. I think there's like 3 or 4 different shades of blue on the Mercedes with some black, a little bit of white. It is classic for Williams, but it's not. They can do better. Like, I know blue is blue, different versions of it. I'm a guy, I see one version of blue generally, but I know there's 5 different types on this car. I think it's a little busy than what it needs to be. Now, is it up the Williams logo? Yes, they've changed it, kind of gone back to the history of Williams. So you've got the modern Williams blue, and it's kind of throughout the years, it's the different shades. I understand the heritage behind it, but still, I think it's a little ugly. Like, you don't need to have it that many different shades of blue. Maybe a nice fade. Ooh, I like that idea. What if you did a back to front? You did a really nice fade of blue. You could slowly transition from one shade to the last. Start with what would be the darkest. So I think that would be the modern Williams blue. Start at the rear wing and just move your way through the decades until you get to the nose where the updated W, and you can get to the old school blue from Williams from there. I think that would be a really good suggestion. I think that would be a really good idea for the rest of the season. But it fades a little bit, but it doesn't really match color schemes. It looks a little amateurish. It looks like they could have spent a lot more time on it than they actually have. So 4 out of 10 at the most for me for Williams. And last but not least, we've got Aston Martin. I mean, it's green and black. It's not a whole lot has changed, which it's a nice car. It looks fast. It looks durable. It looks like something you'd want to drive. I mean, nothing out of the box for me. So I'd give it a solid, 6.5, 7 out of 10. Nothing to really, really write home about. Their release, on the other hand, it crashed. It seemed to crash 2 or 3 times before you actually got to the actual presentation. Now, whether they meant for that to happen or if it was just a media ploy to get people more excited, like, hey, what's going on? It was okay. It wasn't nothing. It wasn't anything too spectacular, blown out of the water. It wasn't like when they brought back more of a traditional green, kind of a James Bond feel a couple seasons ago. That was a good reveal. This one was just kind of, hey, new car. We've thought about the paint. Maybe it's a little bit deeper, a little bit more enriched, but other than that, meh, green is green. So taking into consideration all of some of the new history parts of some of the cars and retro looks and the new gloss and the new mats and all that kind of stuff, and just the new car in general, what I would give to the overall livery delivery of the 2026 season, it's a hard thing to go because you got some really, really nice cars on one end and you've got some other cars on the other end where you're going, okay, what did you do? Did you dust it off? Did you just leave it from last year? Like, what have you done? There's no real visible additions. And then there's some cars you're looking at, just scratching your head going, what the fuck did you do? Like, how did this get approved? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, I'm going to give this livery delivery of 2026 a solid 6.5 out of 10. Like I said, some cars really blew me away. Some cars left me severely wanting more, but overall it was a pretty good event. It didn't overpromise, which is one thing I will give everybody credit for. It didn't overpromise. It didn't really disappoint. You knew what you were getting. You were going to get the same looking car from afar as everyone else across the board. You're just getting new paint jobs. They weren't advertising anything more. They weren't advertising anything less. So in that case, they fully delivered on that aspect. All right, moving on. Poor Valtteri Bottas. He hasn't even stepped foot on a race yet. He hasn't raced 1 second. He's got into the car. He's tried it out. And he already has a five-place grid penalty for the very first race of the season. Now, why does he have this? You're thinking, well, he hasn't raced in a couple seasons. What the hell's going on? This is a 5-place grid penalty back from 2024 with a collision from Kevin Magnussen. With Kevin Magnussen. So the rule states that he was going to get this grid place penalty anyways, and it has to be served in your next race. Well, after that race, Valtteri Bottas was pulled out and he was replaced by Kimi Antonelli, and he's never raced again. Now, thinking this wasn't going to be much of a big deal, it's one of those history books. It'll be the longest time in between served penalties or something like that, because he wasn't really ever scheduled at that time realistically to ever drive again. Cadillac was still massively up in the air. He didn't have a job. He wasn't really going anywhere else, and his future was definitely a massive question mark. Then obviously we all know this. Cadillac comes along, signs him up, and he gets hit with a 5-place grid penalty in the Australian Grand Prix this year, first race of the season. Does this suck? Yeah, but it doesn't go against his point license. It doesn't go against anything else. It's just serving an old penalty. There's no extra fine. There's anything like that. And honestly, we're about to see what Cadillac is made of. Now, take away the 5-place grid penalty. If he still gets in the top 10, top 5, and he still gets bumped back those 5 spaces, you can definitely tell from there on out what Valtteri's mindset is, how his conditioning has been, and more importantly, how the car is going to react and how the car is going to keep up, at least in the first half of the season. So, Valtteri, I'm very, very sorry. We are very happy to have you back in Formula One. Unfortunately, 5-place grid penalty, and you haven't even taken a single second on track. Now, speaking of someone who has been out for a while, but maybe on the upswing and coming back, Christian Horner never leaves the world of F1. Now, I'm sure you've seen some titles that he's going to be back for sure and this and that. Here's the deal. Christian Horner ended his contract with Red Bull. They bought him out, $100 million plus for the rest of his contract, making some serious money. Christian Horner also stated that he was not ready to leave Formula One yet, but where the hell was he going to go? He can make his return in F1 as early as the Miami Grand Prix. But how is this going to happen? He's not going to be a chief. He's not going to be directly involved in the team quite yet. What Christian Horner has done is he's joined a conglomerate of investors, and, take a guess on what team needs more investors. He's becoming a part of a conglomerate that is looking to invest in Alpine. That's right. More investors in Alpine. But in this situation, this conglomerate would have a majority stake of ownership or partnership in Alpine, giving Christian Horner the opportunity to become an actual member of the race team. Like I said, as early as Miami Grand Prix. So what's his direction when it comes to this? Does he want to be the head chief? Does he want to be an owner? Does he want to be, spotlight, all that kind of stuff? I'm going to say yes and no across the board. Does he want to be more directly involved with another F1 team? Yes, absolutely. Christian Horner is not done in Formula One by any stretch of the imagination. He wants to be in there. He wants to know his opinions heard. And he's also got a level of knowledge and competitiveness that it's really hard to find with the rest of the people that work in Formula One. Now, when is this timeline going to happen? If they approve this conglomerate, if they approve him coming into Alpine, and let's be honest, it's Alpine. They need more money than, anything else in this world. He will have to still wait a few years before he can even think about becoming part of the actual day-to-day running of the team if he's ever allowed. If he is to be allowed, he would definitely have to shell out a couple more $100 million. We all know what Christian Horner is about. We all know how rich he is, but at the same time, his reputation has still and will always precede him as not being the easiest to work with. But if Christian can come up with ideas and actually legitimately, as a team member, not as a leader, but as a team member, help the Alpine team actually come up with, ideas that will help Alpine, I think he is still worth that kind of risk. Now, has he learned his lesson with all the inappropriate shit that he allegedly did? Absolutely. If he wouldn't, he would be an absolute fucking moron. And what's the point of him coming back? I just think it will be probably 2027. We'll see Christian Horner's name pop up in F1 a lot more associated with Alpine, but taking a more controlling role in the team when it comes to strategy, when it comes to staff, when it comes to driver lineups, all that kind of stuff. And don't be surprised in the near future, again, 27, maybe even 28, that he will be the new head chief of the Alpine F1 team. Now, this next hot topic is a little bit backdated, but there's a few explanations for that. So let's start again. When it comes to the training and it comes to the warm-up season for F1, you have two training sessions, essentially, 2 weekends. So each team gets about, I think it's 4 days total of different kind of weather conditions and to get their car into proper aerodynamic shape, get the drivers used to it, and do any kind of fixes before the season starts. Bahrain is right now for the second week, and this is the last week that they have to do practices before it's just straight up sim work. Well, Williams missed the very first week, which made massive titles of, oh my God, this is the same as last couple years. They're going to miss it. It's going to be an absolute catastrophe. What are they doing? Season's doomed already. What's going on? Well, Williams has made the changes that they needed to be to actually participate in the second week in Bahrain. But what were those changes? Williams, they missed the week shakedown. They didn't have approval to actually run the car. One, the car was too overweight still, so they needed to take weight out of the car. Where they took weight out of the car, obviously, ended up being a catastrophe when it comes to safety features. The front end of the car was not meeting safety regulations. They had to run nothing but virtual tests from there on out. So they could put it in the aerodyne, they could put it in a simulator test, you could put it in the wind tunnel, all that kind of stuff, to find out where else they could lose weight, because where they were pulling all the weight from made the car ridiculously dangerous. So F1 cars, if you don't know, F1 cars also goes through the same kind of collision tests as modern day cars do. Obviously, it was some kind of, changes here and there. There's no airbags, all that kind of fun stuff. So it's more on the structural integrity of the car than anything else. That is the safety feature of the car. You've got the halo, you've got the fuel system in a fireproof, bag, and there's the parts of the monocoque comes apart from the actual frame, so the driver stays safe, all that kind of very important things. And one of the more important things is the front of the car for front impacts. And where they were taking the weight, the walls were way too thin, and they weren't even making a third of what the requirements were. So that is why Williams did not make the first week of training running, because they needed to distribute the weight taken away from somewhere else besides the front of the car. Now, reports have shown that they have more than exceeded the safety limits now for this car, so it's officially safe to drive. And they've also somehow been able to shave all this weight off, and they weren't telling anybody how much overweight they were. That's some of the numbers that these guys were just not sharing, but they're officially on weight. They're within the rules and regulations, and now they've passed every single safety feature that they are required to do. So it's not going to be as big of a disaster as everybody thinks. Yes, they have an entire weekend behind of testing, but at the same time, they have a week more of virtual testing than everybody else because everyone else was on track. They've got the aerodynes, they've got the good green paint, see where this needs to get fixed, that needs to get fixed, all this kind of fun stuff. Williams spent the entire time in the simulator. The drivers still got their practice, albeit in the sims and not in real life. But hey, extra practice and information is still extra practice and information. So I don't think it's going to be nearly as bad as everybody thinks. And I'm sure Williams has learned something that a lot of the other teams had absolutely no idea where to pull from, and it would pull some of that weight from, and it would still be structurally viable, that you can still get around. You can still have that integrity that you absolutely need in this type of environment moving forward. Next topic, Max Verstappen leading the way about not necessarily complaining about the cars, but giving his first very honest opinion of the cars. So you're going to talk to some of the drivers that are just happy to be there. Yeah, it's different. It's going to get time to get used to and this and that. Max Verstappen has come out going, these are slow. Now, are they slow in comparison to what we drive? Absolutely not. It is slow in comparison to what they are used to for the last 5 years. This is really showing the level playing field that everybody's having to deal with. No one's really coming out outright and saying these are horrible cars. They're very slow. You can't handle them. It's absolute trash. It's going to be an absolute gong show, all this and that. Lando Norris has expressed his concerns in the best way he can with the papaya rules of not talking shit about your own car. But if you read between the lines, you can obviously tell that these drivers, at least for the first half of the season, as good as they are, out of the top 22 drivers in the world, this is not going to be fun for them, but it's going to be entertaining as hell for us to watch. They're absolutely getting used to the fact that you don't have as much grip. You don't have as much downforce. You don't have as much control into the corners. Like all of these things you absolutely have to forget about for the last 5 years. And you have to learn to drive these cars all over again with only 2 weekends of actual on-track practice. Simulator work can only do so much for you. I don't think it's going to be enough for some of the drivers. Now, I'm not going to say some of the drivers are absolutely going to be behind, but this will, for the modern day era of F1 with all the new rookies and all the new cars and the drivers that are superstars, this first half of this first new season is definitely going to separate the boys from the men when it comes to understanding a brand new style of driving as fast as you possibly can without demolishing your car, without racking up too high of a penalty point rate and all those sorts of fun things. And don't forget, the first 5 or 6 races, a lot of these companies will only have 1 or 2 backups of each part for the entire team, not per car. So you won't have 6 wings between 2 cars. You're going to have 3 wings for 2 cars. So they have to learn a little bit on the faster rate than I'm sure some of them are used to. And it's going to cost these teams a lot more. Now, speaking of cost, they have actually quietly increased the cost cap for this season. They upped it by another 2.5 million euros. That is specifically for the new part regulation, just in case, and for the fuel. The fuel right now that they are running is 100% fossil free. Let me repeat that. The fuel that they are using is 100% fossil free. There is no gasoline in this at all. It's the derivatives from it. So the price right now for F1 is $300 a liter is what this cost is as of right now. And every single one of the teams, this was a collective effort. Every single one of the teams got together. They went to the FIA going, hey, within these budgetary restraints with the fuel is specifically, we cannot afford this. We will blow through the cap before the first half of the season. Here's what it's going to cost. Here's how much more we need. The FIA just absolutely with no issue whatsoever went, okay, here's your increase. Because F1 is still promoting that they will be zero emission by 2030. And with this new fuel additive and it not being fossil based and all this kind of fun stuff, they're definitely on their way to hitting their goal. Now, what will the next development of this fuel look like? No one really knows, but as of right now, they needed the price increase across the board. And, FIA unanimously, yeah, go for it. Because they're brand new parts, because of all the fuel costs, you will get a little bit more, and hopefully it won't be as big of a deal down the road. Now, the last thing that we are going to cover, the first changes have officially come from the first weekend of practice to the second week of practice and it is courtesy of Audi. Absolutely. The battery looking car itself is the very first car to come out with what we are looking at is a, I don't want to call it an evolution. I don't want to call it a revolution, but it's very, very, very intelligent thinking. So we all know that Audi produces cars. We all know that they are very good at what they do when it comes to supercars, street cars, and they have taken this knowledge and they've applied it to F1. So here's what they've done. The first one, the side pod change, actually. So the old side pods that were on the Salvo last year is what they kind of started off with. Now, if you close your eyes and you picture this, picture I think that's a 2-foot open gap that goes from left to right. It was very long. It was very horizontal. That was their side pod to capture air. They kept that for the first little bit. They made it a little wider to catch more air. They changed the side pod design itself. Now, from that weekend to this weekend, what they've discovered is they've gone between what Sauber had and what Mercedes had in the 2022 season. Now, if you're not familiar with what Mercedes used for a side pod in 2022, it was the absolute worst mistake Mercedes could have done in their recent history without full development. And it was because it was the near zero side pod, we'll call it era or mistake, however you want to look at it. So Audi has done a little bit of in between. So they've taken away the horizontal opening. They've made it vertical now. So now it's a substantially thinner, but it's just as long. And the first, call it 2 feet of the side pod does not exist. So that's the no side pod part. But what Audi has done, and I think it's very, very freaking intelligent, is they looked across the board at Mercedes. They looked across the board at every single car for the last couple of years. And what they've done is after that 2 feet of non-existent side pod, they've actually bubbled it out. So it's a half a side pod. But they have made these lines so aggressive on the top and very, very swooping underneath where they are guaranteed to pull that wind where they absolutely need it out of the back for the most speed and the most downforce. I think it is a fantastic, fantastic decision and very ingenious shape that they've done. Now, I think it's going to go one of two ways. It's either going to be ridiculously successful and you're going to see some version of this down the road, or it's going to fail, which I don't think it's going to 100%. But what they're going to do is maybe they're going to change the shape of the side pod moving forward, and it's going to be a revolutionary change. The no side pod side that Mercedes did in 2022, I think is on the right track. They just went too extreme. You need the side pod for airflow. You need the side pod for downforce and all that kind of fun stuff. But do you really need a side pod that big, that wide, that tall? Well, as you see throughout the years, you look at the development of the side pod, they're getting shallower. They're not getting as wide, but they're getting a little taller. So Audi is taking that concept and looked into their little crystal ball, moving forward, going, okay, so if we take parts of this, parts of that, some of them, some of this, mix it all together and think Adrian Newey, it should come out with what they have right now. I think it's a very, very, very smart way for the very first half of the season, because then you can definitely tell, okay, Red Bull side pod's a little bit too wide. Mercedes side pod, a little bit too short. All this and all that, where if you're sitting kind of right in the middle, you'll catch a lot more information that a lot of the other teams won't, and they'll be able to access that. As well as they've made the first changes to the front wings. Now, when you saw the front wing when it first came out, DRS system essentially is off the front wing now. You've got moving flaps. And they were at kind of a swooping angle where it would guide the wind over the car. It was a very gentle angle. Well, Audi looked at that and they've made it substantially steeper. It is no longer a swoop. It is a 100% redirection, and there's no doubt about it. Not only that, but they've also added 2 actuators in the front of the wings to help them with that stability, to help them with that adjustment on the fly. This is the very first modification we have seen of this. Everyone else has kind of gone with a little bit wider wing, a little bit, wider, not necessarily thicker. They've changed the shape of the nose a little bit around the wheels, but Audi is the very first one to actually take a look at the wing and going, hey, you know what? We can do better. Let's go steeper so it's higher. So I think this revolution with the front wing and the side pod is definitely the same upgrade. If they found something where if you go steeper, it's going to probably throw that wind more directly into the side pods, and you have a lot less dirty winds. You got a lot less instability around that side pod than anybody else would. But I mean, I'm very excited to see where this goes. Audi is definitely taking the first big leap forward into essentially playing around with this brand new design. They don't have, I mean, they've got data from Salva, but is it the best kind of data that you really want to go with? Probably not, but they are definitely going in their own direction. And it's definitely going to be one of those wonderful, wonderful things to see. It's either going to crash and burn, or it's going to be one of the best innovations of the modern era in Formula One. And there you have it, everybody. That is the newest and greatest that you need to know in the world of F1. I am sure there's still going to be plenty of stuff to come out that you need to know about before the 2026 season starts. And for all of that information, I really hope that everybody tunes into the newest edition of F101 when those episodes are available. And as always, I'd like to send out a massive, massive thank you to everybody who tunes in when these episodes come out. If it wasn't for everybody listening, I wouldn't have nearly as much fun as I do letting everybody know about one of the passions in my life, and that is F1. So a massive, massive thank you going on to everybody out there. And until the newest edition of F101, keep that engine running and those tires are spinning, and we'll talk to you next time.